Today, with Europe's security architecture and infrastructure under immense strain and the global order fragmenting into competing visions, we're wondering about Russia's posture, its strategy, its alliances, and worldview. We'll be exploring over the next hour or so Minister Lavrov's perspective on this evolving geopolitical reality. What does Russia want? What role does it see for itself in an emerging multipolar world? And how does it define peace, power, and diplomacy in the 21st century? So let's begin. Minister Lavrov, welcome to Antalya once again. I know that you're likely to respond in your mother tongue of Russian, but if I could ask this one question in English. You see a full room out here. I think after President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, you are by far the most popular figure here. How does it feel to be a diplomatic rock star?
Well, I think if we have heads of state being a real rock star, then there is nothing wrong with diplomats to be what they are. And if people like it, if people believe this is fun, so be it.
Well, I think, as they say, the proof is in the pudding. It's a full room. Next year, we should be asking for maybe the Aspendos Ancient Theater, just about 14 kilometers from here. It can fit 14,000 people, I think. Anyway, last year I had the privilege and honor to share the same stage with you. And one of the things that you tried to emphasize was the rise of the multipolar world. 12 months on, how do you assess the current state of this transition, and how do you feel this trajectory has met your country's expectations?
Well, I think the trend became even stronger. More and more countries, big countries, medium-sized countries, small countries, would like to have an equal say in the world affairs, in full conformity with the United Nations Charter, which says that the United Nations is based on sovereign equality of states. And more countries want to determine their life themselves, to have fair treatment, to have fair competition in economy, trade, in other areas, just in line with the principles of globalization, which were promoted by our Western friends, especially by the United States, for so many decades. And when everybody became persuaded, the globalization stopped, and what we observe is fragmentation of the world economy. This is the time of uncertainty, I would say. Nobody knows how the situation with world trade and investment is going to end. Well, there would be no end. How it is going to evolve, I would say, because there would be new twists in this situation. But generally speaking, about multipolarity, it is gaining ground, no doubt about this. Not only big countries like China, India, Brazil, Turkey, Indonesia, Egypt, South Africa, many others. They believe that they deserve a say in world affairs. And therefore, multipolarity is a chance for the United Nations Charter principles to be materialized. Because before, during this globalization, especially during Cold War, the sovereign equality of states was never respected by our Western colleagues. If you retrospectively consider history after World War II and creation of the United Nations, there was no single conflict where the West, the leaders of the West, would be treating parties to a conflict as equals. And I understand that this might sound idealistic, and maybe this equality would never be brought to life. But the principles of the Charter, drafted by the founding fathers, they already provided for multipolarity. Just like they provided for respect for human rights, respect for the right of nations to determine their fate themselves, and this is also on the rise. Manifestations are plentiful, and it is very important to underline that in our vision of multipolarity, as we promote this concept with our partners in Shanghai Cooperation Organization, in BRICS, in Eurasian Economic Union, the concept of multipolarity does not exclude the West. It embraces everybody, just like the Charter instructed us. I see no reason why China and the US shouldn't have good relations, why Russia and the US shouldn't have good relations, why everybody shouldn't be treated with respect and with understanding of national interests. I had some contacts with the members of the Washington administration, and I liked the message which they were carrying. I'm not quoting, but in essence, the message was that the foreign policy of the United States is based on national interests of the United States. At the same time, the United States recognizes that other countries also have their national interests. And those interests would never coincide fully, maybe even half of these interests would not be similar. But when the interests, especially the interests of big countries, coincide, it is essential for them to find ways to materialize them into mutually beneficial economic, logistical, and other projects. While when these interests contradict each other, it is the responsibility and duty of countries, especially if we speak about big powers, not to allow these differences to degenerate into confrontation, especially the hot confrontation. And this is something which we absolutely support. We have been acting the same way throughout our history. And the last element of this multipolarity, in our common region, the security issues after World War II have been addressed from the Euro-Atlantic logic. The NATO, of course, EU was European per se, but lately the European Union signed a deal, a treaty with NATO, treaty on agreement, I don't know, but European Union is now part of Euro-Atlantic policies, no doubt about it, including the provision of its territory for NATO plans to move eastward, southward, I don't know where. OSCE was created as an obviously Euro-Atlantic creature, and all of these Euro-Atlantic constructions, I think they failed. They failed to consolidate security and stability. What they succeeded in is igniting tension and remilitarizing Europe, including Germany, in spite of the fact that the economic and social situation is degrading. But all efforts of this Euro-Atlantic community are concentrated on getting ready for a new war. And Germany, together with France and Britain, are in the lead of this. If you think about how the world looks now, Africa, well, everywhere there are sub-regional organizations, many of them. Organization of Turkish states here, Eurasian Economic Union, ASEAN, Shanghai Cooperation, many. The same is true for Africa, many sub-regional groupings, and in Latin America. But Africa and Latin America, they do have their all-continental structures, African Union and CELAC. In Eurasia, there was never anything like this. As I said, the attempts to bring some big unifying projects were only made on the basis of Euro-Atlantic concept. President Putin, last year when he spoke in the Foreign Ministry, he suggested to consider the discussion of a potential security architecture in Eurasia as a continent. Architecture where all countries, without exceptions, including the western part of the continent, will be invited to participate, where all regional arrangements would be invited to join. And actually we have some years ago started building bridges between Shanghai Cooperation and Eurasian Economic Union, Eurasian Economic Union and ASEAN, Shanghai, ASEAN. We have been also planning contacts between these groups and, for example, Gulf Cooperation Council, which is also a security but also an economic organization. And about 10 years ago, we started building these bridges without having anything in mind in the security area, but economically, logistically, finding ways to cooperate, to join efforts, to harmonize plans. And this is a promising process. We call it Greater Eurasian Partnership. And this is something like potential material foundation for the future security system, open to all countries and organizations representing Eurasia continent. So I think we are in favor of interactive discussion, so I, with your permission, stop here.
No, please, by all means. Do you feel that it's perhaps the West's failure, some of the institutions and bodies that they have set up after World War II? You've described it as a failure. That's how you said. And the fact that you're talking about a greater Eurasia partnership, aside the military, aside the strategic perspective, is that a success in the 21st century?
No, we cannot call a success something which is just being born in the minds of people. But the process of, analyzing the situation is based on the failures of the Euro-Atlantic models of security. NATO should have been dissolved in the first place after the Soviet Union ceased to exist, after the Warsaw Treaty ceased to exist. And there were voices in the West saying, guys, let's now concentrate on OSCE. Let's give it some push, and let's be all in one organization. NATO, the promises given to Gorbachev, then to Yeltsin, and there are memoirs where some people ask, why didn't you insisted on a written guarantee when Jim Baker said NATO would not move an inch to the east? My answer, it just occurred to me. In the Russian history, since 17th, 18th century, when the trade was booming, nobody signed any contracts. They shook hands.
It was a word of honor?
They shook hands, the word of honor, and it was never violated. So probably those who were running NATO at the time we are discussing didn't have any relatives in the former Tsarist Empire, which is not my fault, and did not inherit those traditions. But NATO not only stayed remained, it was basically announced that this would be the only organization which can guarantee your security. 1999, Istanbul, summit of OSCE, the solemn declaration is adopted, which among other things said, security is equal and indivisible. Everybody, yes, has the right to choose security alliances, but this cannot be done at the expense of diminishing of security of others. Then it was even blunter when it said no country, no group of countries, no organizations in the Euro-Atlantic OSCE area can claim dominance. And NATO was doing exactly this. And when Putin came to power, was elected president, he was repeatedly warning about very dangerous nature of this course. 2007 in Munich, if you re-listen it now, it was very far-sighted, unfortunately. Then 2008, NATO summit in Bucharest, which was also followed by Russian NATO summit. I was there with President Putin. When it was announced that Germany and France did not allow to pass a decision formally launching negotiating process for Georgia and Ukraine to be admitted to NATO, the Germans and the French were proud. They said, but they included in the declaration the statement that Georgia and Ukraine will be in NATO. When Putin asked Merkel, what is the difference? She said, no, this is just a political statement. And what we managed to avoid was a legal process to be launched. But frankly, it's childish. Because Saakashvili lost his brains a few months after Bucharest, when he ordered the attack of the Russian peacekeepers in South Ossetia, violated the OSCE endorsed agreement, and so on and so forth. Then, in 2010, in Astana, this was the last summit of OSCE so far, the Istanbul formula was repeated verbatim. No organization can claim dominance, no one strengthens his security at the expense of security of others. The lady is uncomfortable, you think? No, but there is some commotion all the time here. And then when this NATO expansion continued and when it was clear that these principles promulgated in OSCE about equal and indivisible security, that they were not being implemented, then we suggested to have the same language and codify it in a legally binding agreement. We were told, it was during Obama administration, we were told, no, guys, you don't understand. Legally binding guarantees one can only get in NATO. We said, but your president signed this OSCE declaration. They said, this is political statement. Cheating is the key word for what was happening. And our last attempt, but we still in 2008 and 2010 were proposing the draft agreements between Russia and NATO, Russia and the United States. The same we did in 2021 in December. To no avail. So yes, my point is that NATO did not, or rather NATO failed to strengthen security because NATO was manipulated by those who did not want to share security benefits. And they wanted to leave all the benefits for themselves, for others to listen and get instructions. OSCE, another Euro-Atlantic creature, has failed a few years ago when the basic principle of consensus was grossly violated by the people who replaced each other at the position of the chair in office, at the Secretary General position. All the institutions, national minorities, freedom of media, what else? You see, I even forget about some institutions, which means that OSCE is not on anybody's mind anymore. Yes, they failed. We are not suggesting, to have another closed club. All continents have their own continental roofs, if you wish. Not in Eurasia. And Eurasia is the biggest, the richest, I would say. Well, Africa is also very rich, but it is not yet opening up this potential. And if you speak from civilizational point of view, the number of great civilizations
Coming from that area?
coming from Eurasia, including this one, and including China, including Persia, India. Russia is younger, but you would forgive me if I also say that it's a great one.